May 6, 1937. The sky over Lakehurst, New Jersey is suddenly illuminated by an orange fireball. In exactly 34 seconds, the largest aircraft ever constructed is reduced to a burning skeleton on the ground. While the ignition happened on a rainy landing field, the actual path to this disaster began back in 1925. It was built into the airship's design through 12 years of political embargoes, metal fatigue, and high-stakes engineering compromises. The true cause of the crash reveals the terrifying mechanics behind how seemingly invincible, complex systems actually fail. Look at the sheer scale of the passenger decks. The Hindenburg was roughly the length of the Titanic, offering 3-day luxury trips across the Atlantic, complete with spacious dining rooms, private cabins, and an aluminum grand piano floating 800 feet above the ocean. But she was also an untouchable flying billboard. With massive swastikas painted directly onto the tail fins, the airship was heavily funded by the German government to project absolute aerial superiority to the rest of the world. To keep this behemoth safely in the air, the master engineers at the Zeppelin Company designed the ship to use helium. Helium is completely inert. It doesn't catch fire. The United States controlled nearly all of the global helium supply, and Congress banned its export due to military fears. Denied the safe gas, German engineers pivoted to the only viable alternative. They packed 7 million cubic feet of highly flammable hydrogen into 16 massive cells, running the entire length of the ship. Years before the Hindenburg ever left the hangar, international political tensions had unwittingly armed a colossal bomb in the sky. Fast forward to 12 hours before the disaster. The ship is battling fierce North Atlantic headwinds and navigating around thunderstorms along the Jersey shore, putting the flight severely behind schedule. Aboard the ship are high-profile passengers holding tickets to the coronation of King George VI in London, which is just 6 days away. The airline's director is on the bridge, applying intense pressure on Captain Max Press to land immediately and keep their flawless reputation intact. To save time, Captain Press bypasses standard procedures. Instead of walking the ship down slowly with hundreds of ground crewmen, he attempts a flying moor, dropping thick mooring ropes from 200 feet in the air while the engines are still running. But the winds at the landing field suddenly shift. To align the massive nose with the mooring mast, Press orders aggressive, full-speed turns, first a sharp left, then an even tighter right. A rigid adherence to the timetable forces the crew to subject the 800-foot airframe to high-stress, violent maneuvers it was never designed to absorb. Deep inside the hull, those sharp turns bend the massive aluminum skeleton back and forth like a paperclip. Transatlantic crossings have weakened the metal frame. During that final tight turn, a single shear wire near the tail fins reaches its limit and snaps. The broken steel cable whips backward, slicing right through the delicate fabric wall of gas cell 4. Hydrogen, 14 times lighter than air, begins pouring silently out of the punctured cell. It rises and pools against the upper outer skin, mixing with incoming oxygen to form a highly explosive gas cloud. A catastrophic mechanical failure has occurred. The tail grows heavy, and the officers drop water ballast to compensate, completely unaware of the invisible leak spreading just above them. Now we are minutes away from the end. The flying mooring begins, and the heavy mooring ropes are thrown down to the ground crews waiting below. This diagram shows how the ship became an accidental battery. The cotton outer skin was coated with a varnish containing aluminum flakes to reflect sunlight, but it was tied to the frame using insulating plant fibers. This meant the skin could hold a massive electrical charge from the storm, while the internal skeleton remained completely neutral. When the heavy landing ropes drop, they are soaked by the rain. The moment they hit the wet grass, they form a perfect electrical connection, grounding the ship's internal framework to the earth. But the outer skin is still holding every volt the storm gave it. This voltage gap grows until it forces a massive electrical spark to leap between the charged skin and the grounded frame, directly over the leaking hydrogen. The storm, the conductive aluminum flake paint, and a wet piece of rope formed a perfect electrical trigger for the invisible leak. The rear of the ship blooms orange. The fire tears through the gas cells in a devastating chain reaction, consuming the entire aircraft in exactly 34 seconds. Passengers leap from the observation windows as the ship falls 200 feet to the ground. 62 people miraculously survive, but 36 are killed, leaving behind an incinerated metal skeleton resting in the mud. The public immediately looks for a villain. Because the ship was a global symbol of the Nazi regime, investigators assume an anti-fascist saboteur planted a time bomb. Suspicion quickly falls on a passenger who happened to be a professional acrobat. His unique physical skills and impatient behavior during the delay make him an easy target for conspiracy theorists. Human nature instinctively wants a clear enemy to blame. But the reality of this disaster requires looking past a lone saboteur to see the compounding mechanics of a much deeper failure. A political embargo from 1925, an afternoon thunderstorm, a rushed turn, hidden metal fatigue, and static electricity all perfectly aligned within a 3-minute window. This alignment perfectly illustrates a concept called the Swiss cheese model of accident causation. Each slice of cheese represents a defense against failure, and each hole represents a weakness. An accident only happens when the holes perfectly overlap. The disaster forced engineers to stop planning for single, isolated errors and start designing systems that can survive multiple overlapping failures. The Hindenburg fell because her operators assumed multiple things would never go wrong at the same time. The legacy of those 34 seconds is a question built into every modern aircraft. Who is watching for the second failure?